My boyfriend became my stepfather. I met Kevin through an introduction. He had a community college degree. I held a degree from a top-tier university. He was 37, I was 26. He taught elementary school. I worked at a large state-owned enterprise. His semi-annual salary probably didn't even match what I made during my internship. Logically, someone like him and I should have moved in completely different orbits. But fate, or rather my mother, had other plans. She was quite taken with him. When I first learned the man she wanted to set me up with was a full 11 years older than me, I thought my mother had lost her mind. Even if I was struggling to find a suitable partner, surely it hadn't come to marrying someone practically from another generation? But Mom insisted. Older men are more settled, more family-oriented, she argued. And he has a stable job. You should be grateful, Olivia. Her words wore me down. I decided to give it a try. And indeed, Kevin was polite, thoughtful, possessing a mature charm that distinguished him from the men I usually encountered. Soon, under my mother's persistent encouragement, we officially began dating. Like most new relationships, the beginning was intoxicatingly sweet. I quickly found myself caught in the dizzying vortex of new love. I lived for the end of the workday, eagerly, anticipating Kevin waiting downstairs to walk me home together. Oh, right, at my mother's suggestion, Kevin and I had already moved in together. Things were progressing rapidly. After a while, my mother called, sounding lonely. She complained about how isolated she felt back in our hometown, since my father passed away years ago. She planned to sell the old house and move in with me. Knowing how difficult things had been for her, raising me alone, and having a spare room available, I readily agreed. I had no inkling then that this seemingly compassionate decision would plant the seeds for future disaster. Ma moved in while I was stuck working late overtime at the office. Kevin thoughtfully took the day off work to pick her up from the station. When they arrived safely at the apartment, he sent me a message. Reading his cheerful text, a warmth spread through me. Having another person in the house felt genuinely good. It was late evening by the time I finally got home. Opening the door, I found Kevin and my mother sitting close together on the sofa. Mom's head was resting comfortably on Kevin's shoulder. Their posture was intimate. Seeing me, they both smiled, especially Mom, who seemed particularly delighted by my return. "You're back," she exclaimed brightly. Kevin was just showing me how to use this second-hand marketplace app. I never realized phones could do so much. "Your mom's a quick learner, really sharp," Kevin chimed in smoothly, his compliment making my mother beam with pleasure. Clearly, they were getting along famously. But soon, I started noticing changes in my mother. She seemed rejuvenated, almost like she was in love. She spent ages preening in front of the mirror before going out, even digging out brightly colored dresses I hadn't seen her wear in years. She started wearing makeup again, experimenting with new hairstyles. I watched these transformations with quiet curiosity. Truthfully, my mother had sacrificed a lot for me. She never remarried after Dad died, determined to raise me on her own and provide me with the best possible life. If she could find happiness and love now, I, as her daughter, would be genuinely thrilled for her. I even started setting aside part of my salary, intending to support her newfound romance. Then, everything shattered with a single photograph sent by a colleague. The image was crystal clear. My mother, radiant in a floral print dress, her hair styled in an intricate chestnut-colored braid, smiling dazzlingly, arm in arm with a man in a sharp suit. She looked utterly smitten, like a young girl experiencing her first love. The man's face was slightly obscured, but the suit, I knew that suit intimately. It was the expensive birthday gift I'd bought for Kevin, the one I'd hunted for across several different stores. Why were they together, looking like that? A cold knot of dread tightening in my stomach, I took the next day off work and went straight to the location my colleague had mentioned. A quaint little cafe downtown. Sure enough, they were still there. Seated at a corner table, their actions were undeniably intimate. Leaning close, sharing pastries, laughing softly. They looked exactly like a couple deeply immersed in the throes of a passionate affair. I didn't confront them. Instead, I pulled out my phone, my hand surprisingly steady despite the turmoil inside, and dialed Kevin's number. As the phone rang, a desperate part of me clung to denial. Maybe this was just an elaborate, awkward way for a son-in-law figure to bond with his girlfriend's mother? But the slick sheen of sweat coating my palm told a different story. When he answered, I asked calmly where he was. He replied smoothly, without a hint of hesitation or guilt. that he was at school, helping students with their assignments. I looked up from my phone, my gaze fixed on the scene inside the cafe. So the assignment he was currently guiding involved feeding his girlfriend's mother small bites of cake? I didn't storm in. I didn't scream accusations. Instead, on the long, numb drive home, my mind raced, replaying scenes, searching for clues. When had this started? How long had it been going on? Or worse, was it possible that from the very beginning, from the moment my mother introduced us, I had unknowingly stepped into their elaborate trap? The thought terrified me. Was I just a convenient cover story? A smokescreen for their illicit relationship? What was I supposed to do now? By the time they arrived home later that evening, laughing and chatting easily, I had been sitting numbly on the sofa for hours, trapped in a vortex of confusion and betrayal. Should I confront them? Pretend I knew nothing? The indecision was paralyzing. Their cheerful faces, which would normally have brought me comfort, now felt like sharp needles pricking my skin. I asked, my voice carefully neutral, why they had come home together. Kevin, ever composed perhaps because he'd rehearsed this scenario countless times, answered smoothly. We just happened to bump into each other nearby. Your mom's only been here a short while, Olivia. You shouldn't let her wander around alone, you know. He even managed to subtly shift the blame onto me. My mother nodded in agreement, her eyes urging me to believe them. I forced a brittle smile. Oh, I see. What a coincidence. My apparent acceptance seemed to put them at ease. Perhaps sensing my subdued mood, or maybe just continuing their charade, Kevin walked over, holding something out to me with a mysterious flourish. I saw what it was. Cake. It was the same type of cake I'd seen him feeding my mother earlier. The image flashed back, visceral and sickening. Bile rose in my throat. Looking up at his smiling face, a surge of revulsion washed over me. With a sharp, involuntary movement, I swatted his hand away. The small cake box flew through the air, landing with a soft thud on the carpet. My action stunned them both. My mother gasped. Kevin's face contorted with anger. What the hell is wrong with you, Olivia? He snapped. He dared to ask what was wrong with me? Hadn't it even occurred to him why I might react that way? Or was he just so confident, so certain his secret was safe, that my behavior seemed utterly irrational? My mother, however, flinched at my outburst. Her eyes flickered with a complex mix of emotions. Fear, guilt, maybe even a flicker of defiance. But seeing it now through the lens of betrayal, I didn't interpret it as remorse for hurting her daughter. It looked like pure, unadulterated fear, the terror of their twisted relationship being exposed. And then the words I'd been holding back finally spilled out, cold and sharp. Tell me. I began, my voice trembling slightly despite my efforts to control it. What should someone do if they discover their boyfriend is cheating on them, and the other woman is their own mother? Silence descended like a physical weight. As expected, Kevin froze, his face paling dramatically. My mother swayed on her feet, looking as though she might faint. What are you talking about? Kevin stammered, his voice audibly shaking. He was testing me, trying to gauge how much I knew. But he underestimated me. If he could act, so could I. Their reactions were, admittedly, satisfyingly dramatic. But I decided to twist the knife slowly. Oh, it's my colleague, I said, feigning casual concern. She found out her boyfriend and her mother have been seeing each other behind her back. Apparently, it's been going on for quite some time. As I spoke, pretending the story had nothing to do with us, Kevin seemed to regain some composure. Perhaps relieved his own secret wasn't out. He sat down beside me, draping his arm around my shoulders in a familiar gesture of affection. Still gentle, still playing the loving boyfriend, trying to subtly convey that nothing was amiss between him and my mother. But his touch now felt repulsive. The thought that this same hand had likely held my mother, caressed her hair, fed her cake, it made my stomach churn. I subtly shifted away, escaping his embrace under the guise of adjusting my position. Don't you think, I mused aloud, staring blankly ahead, that a relationship between a son-in-law figure and a mother-in-law figure, isn't that just fundamentally wrong? Perverted even. I felt Kevin stiffen beside me, but he forced himself to remain calm, determined not to reveal anything. It's other people's business, Olivia. Why get so worked up about it? Because it disgusts me, I stated bluntly, meeting his eyes. The atmosphere instantly plunged into icy tension. All three of us seemed to be scrutinizing each other, searching for tells, for cracks in the carefully constructed facades. But we were all, unfortunately, masters of deception. Livy, my mother finally whispered, her voice trembling, tears welling in her eyes, making her look fragile and heartbroken, the kind of vulnerability that would make most men rush to comfort her. I could almost feel Kevin vibrating with the urge to do just that. But he restrained himself. Do you know something? I looked up, widening my eyes in feigned innocence. Know what? Nothing, she murmured, quickly composing herself. It's just that kind of relationship truly is unthinkable. Utterly, horribly wrong. I knew my mother. She understood me better than anyone. She knew I knew. Her words weren't just for me. They were a clear message to Kevin. It's over. I glanced at Kevin. He was staring intently at my mother. My mother looked back at me. We were trapped in a bizarre, suffocating triangle, none of us able to escape. Kevin began to tremble. Not when he thought I'd discovered their secret affair, but now, hearing my mother's pronouncement. The irony was almost laughable. I couldn't stand being in that room a second longer. Standing up abruptly, I mumbled an excuse about my colleague needing support, being unable to cope with the reality of her situation. I closed the front door behind me, pausing for a moment on the landing. I looked back at the apartment I used to eagerly return to each day. It felt utterly alien now, tainted and suffocating. I knew exactly what kind of conversation would likely happen inside. Before leaving, I discreetly tucked my phone, already recording audio, deep into the crevice between the sofa cushions. I walked down to the riverbank and stood there for over an hour, the cold wind whipping around me, trying to clear my head. What should I do? If they insisted on being together, should I step aside? Or should I fight? Expose them? Let them face the public shame and condemnation? But deep down I knew I didn't want that. If I truly wanted to destroy their reputations, I could have presented the evidence right then and there, left them speechless and consumed by guilt, while I stood triumphant on the moral high ground. After an hour I walked back. Letting myself into the silent apartment, I saw the living room was empty. I wasn't curious about where they were. I went straight to the sofa, retrieved my phone, plugged in my earphones and pressed play. The audio was muffled, filled with background noise, but the crucial words came through sharp and clear. My mother's voice choked with emotion. We have to end this, Kevin. Livy knows. She knows everything. She was giving me a chance. Giving us a chance to stop. This relationship was wrong from the start. You're Livy's boyfriend now. We can't keep doing this to her. A pause, then her voice again, filled with fear and exhaustion. Every single day we were together I was terrified. Terrified Livy would find out. Terrified I was falling deeper. Terrified she would leave me. We should have ended this long ago. Then came the muffled sound of fist hitting furniture, followed by the distinct click of a door closing. Listening to the recording, an involuntary sigh of relief escaped me. A release of tension I hadn't even realized I was holding. Opening my bedroom door later, I found Kevin already asleep in bed, turned away from my side. I slipped carefully under the covers, curling up behind him, wrapping an arm around his waist. As long as they truly ended it, perhaps I could pretend this nightmare had never happened. In the days that followed, Kevin became exceptionally attentive, almost overly solicitous. My mother made plans to move out, finding her own small apartment nearby. Everything seemed to be slowly, painstakingly returning to some semblance of normalcy. If only I hadn't found that thing. My mother settled into her new place and found a job, finishing work around 7 each evening. Since the confrontation, Kevin and she seemed to have genuinely severed contact. Unless it was a special occasion or I was present, they didn't see each other. But today was a special occasion. It was my mother's birthday. I'd made sure to get a spare key to her apartment beforehand. My plan was to arrive before she got home from work, whip up a celebratory feast, and surprise her. Kevin and I arrived laden with grocery bags. We set to work in her small kitchen, falling into our familiar rhythm, me chopping vegetables, him expertly handling the wok. It was one of the things I genuinely appreciated about him. He never expected the woman to do all the cooking. Everything was proceeding smoothly until it wasn't. I felt a sudden, unmistakable warmth between my legs. My period. My heart tightened with mild panic. Looking up, I saw Kevin notice my sudden stillness. Everything okay? He asked with concern. I quickly explained the situation. He nodded understandingly and told me to go rest on the sofa. But first I desperately needed supplies. I remembered my mother always kept spare sanitary pads in her bathroom cabinet. Familiar with her habits, I went into the bathroom and opened the mirrored cabinet above the sink. Sure enough, a new package sat on the shelf. But something else beside it caught my eye. A small cardboard box. The large, bold letters printed on it were unmistakable. Early pregnancy test. My mother? Why would she have this? Why would she need to test for pregnancy? A cold wave of dread washed over me, stealing my breath. The test packet inside the box had been torn open. It had clearly been used. My eyes darted frantically towards the small waste bin beside the toilet. Could the used test still be in there? Ignoring the potential grime and unpleasantness, I impulsively tipped the bin over onto the tiled floor, scattering its contents. My hand sifted desperately through crumpled tissues and discarded wrappers, searching for the answer I feared. There it was, a thin plastic test strip stuck to a piece of paper. I picked it up with trembling fingers. My vision swam as I focused on the small result window. 2 distinct lines. 2 lines indicating a positive result. Pregnant. I stumbled out of the bathroom, feeling numb, disoriented. So much for them ending things. So much for returning to normal. They were still involved, entangled to the point of this. On the dining table, the elaborate birthday meal Kevin had prepared sat waiting. All my mother's favorite dishes. Once again, the bitter taste of being a fool, a pawn in their game, filled my mouth. My face must have been deathly pale, my body trembling visibly. Kevin, seeing my distress, misinterpreted it as severe menstrual cramps. He even thoughtfully brought me a glass of hot water. The warmth from the cup didn't reach my icy hands. I looked up at him, my voice hollow. Have you seen my mother since she moved out? No. He swore instantly, his eyes wide with feigned innocence. He came closer, placing his hands over mine, his gaze intensely sincere, almost soulful. I come straight home from work, Olivia. I've been with you the whole time. For the first time, I truly understood that eyes could lie. That deep sincerity could mask profound deceit. Why was he still lying to me even now? Just then, the sound of a key turning in the lock interrupted the tense silence. My mother was home. Kevin quickly dropped my hands and rushed to the door, greeting her with a bright, enthusiastic happy birthday. His warmth seemed utterly genuine. But my mother's gaze immediately flew to me, noticing my pallor, my distress. She looked puzzled, concerned. When Kevin quickly explained I was just feeling unwell because of my period, a visible wave of relief washed over her. Of course, the last time I'd looked this distraught was when I'd first discovered their secret. She probably assumed I was just having lingering emotional aftershocks. But no. I had discovered something new. Something far worse. During dinner, I couldn't bring myself to eat a single bite. Mom and Kevin initially urged me to eat, attributing my lack of appetite to cramps, but eventually fell silent on the matter. They, however, chatted animatedly, though their conversation felt strained, cautious, acutely aware of my brooding presence. I endured the meal, the cake, the forced cheerfulness of the birthday song. But as the last candle flickered out, the dam inside me finally broke. Why are you still lying to me? My voice started low, trembling, then rose to a raw shout. Why are you both still lying to me? Tears I could no longer contain streamed down my face, hot and furious. My outburst stunned them into silence, their faces blank with confusion. Livy, my mother whispered, reaching out a tentative hand. You've been seeing each other all along, haven't you? I sobbed, the words tumbling out in a torrent of pain and accusation. Why did you keep lying? Mom, I'm your daughter. Didn't you introduce him to me? Why did you conspire together to deceive me? If you wanted him, why push him onto me only to steal him back? Why? Tell me why. I thought we could finally have a normal life. I choked out between sobs, the grief overwhelming me. Why did you have to disappoint me again? Hurt me again? My legs buckled and I collapsed onto the floor, burying my face in my hands, consumed by raw anguish. My mother seemed to realize then what I must have discovered. She knelt beside me, tears streaming down her own face, her voice thick with remorse. I'm sorry, Livy, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to. I couldn't control myself. I'm so sorry, truly sorry. Kevin stood frozen nearby, his face a mask of misery and indecision. He looked torn, wanting to comfort me, wanting to hold my mother, utterly paralyzed, caught between the two weeping women. Why? The question echoed endlessly in my mind. What had I done wrong in this whole twisted mess? Exhausted from crying, I finally pushed my mother away gently. Looking directly into her tear-streaked face, I asked the question that had been burning inside me since leaving the bathroom, my voice now eerily calm. How long? Perhaps startled by my sudden shift from hysterical grief to quiet intensity, my mother blinked confused. A week after I moved out, she answered automatically, thinking I meant when they had resumed contact. No, I clarified, my voice flat. I'm asking how long you've been pregnant. My mother gasped, realizing I knew her deepest secret, the one she hadn't even shared with Kevin. Even he looked shocked, then a flicker of something, hope, excitement, lit up his eyes as he heard my question. I'm not pregnant, my mother denied vehemently. I saw the test in the bathroom. 2 lines. That means pregnant. Her lips trembled, words failing her. She couldn't meet my gaze, turning her head away, repeating weakly, I'm not pregnant. Why are you still hiding it? I pressed relentlessly. What does not pregnant mean? Were you planning to have it secretly? Get rid of it secretly? Is that what you call not pregnant? Like mother, like daughter. I knew her tells, her evasions. Her flickering eyes confirmed my suspicion. Kevin could bear the suspense no longer. He knelt beside my mother, his voice urgent. You're pregnant? Really? Why didn't you tell me? Why keep it from me? We've already made too many mistakes, my mother whispered brokenly. Always admitting fault, yet always repeating the same errors. I'd seen this pattern before. I should have been numb to it by now. Using the table for support, I pulled myself slowly to my feet, looking down at the kneeling figures of my mother and the man who was once my boyfriend. A fresh wave of disgust washed over me. It was too late for reconciliation, too late for forgiveness. All I had left now was my dignity. It's your child, I stated, my voice cold and distant. Whether you keep it or not is your decision. Once again, I was the one walking away. But this time there was no lingering hope for normalcy, no desire for reconciliation. This time my heart was well and truly dead to them. I sat alone in my own apartment until dawn. Kevin didn't come back. I hadn't expected him to. With my mother pregnant, his focus, his joy would be entirely on her, on the prospect of fatherhood. I packed the remainder of my belongings methodically. I waited for him. I knew he would come. At 10 o'clock a text message arrived. Are you home? We need to talk. He arrived half an hour later. The moment he walked through the door, the guilt etched on his face, the way he couldn't meet my eyes, told me everything I needed to know. You've decided, haven't you? I asked quietly. He nodded slowly. We've decided to keep the baby. We need this child. In that case, I said, the words feeling like shards of glass in my throat despite knowing this was inevitable. We're breaking up. I bit down hard on my lip, letting the physical pain distract from the emotional agony. Olivia, I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. I cut him off sharply. I've heard sorry more times than I can count. Does sorry erase what happened? No. It just eases your guilt, your burden. So keep your apologies. I don't accept them. I want you both to live with this guilt for the rest of your lives. Live in the shadow of what you did to me. Olivia. Don't call me that. I snapped, the nickname suddenly feeling nauseating. Every second I spend near you now feels disgusting. Your mother said the house is yours. I'll move out. Unnecessary. I pulled my packed suitcase out from beside the sofa. I've already requested a transfer to another province. I don't want to spend another minute breathing the same air as either of you. Keep the house, sell it, do whatever you want with it. Consider it repayment for raising me all these years. We're even now. I walked out and didn't look back. I moved to a new city, determined to build a new life, desperate to forget the ugliness I'd left behind. But sometimes nightmares still jolted me awake in the dead of night, leaving me sitting bolt upright in bed until dawn. The psychological scars they'd inflicted, I feared, would never truly fade. During my first year away, Chloe told me Kevin and my mother had gotten married. They'd had a baby boy. Mom suffered health complications due to her age during childbirth. They even had the audacity to send me a wedding invitation. I didn't go. I knew it wasn't a genuine gesture. It was a test, a way to gauge if I had forgiven them, and I refused to give them the satisfaction, refused to let them live comfortable, guilt-free lives. I didn't want them to be happy. Yes, I was selfish in my bitterness. But reality, as always, was brutally indifferent to my desires. My boyfriend had officially become my stepfather. I threw myself into my work in the new city. The project I was assigned, a struggling division everyone else had written off, began to thrive under my relentless management. All the bitterness, all the resentment, I channeled it into ambition, propelling myself upwards. Eventually, I reached the position of vice president. People addressed me respectfully as Ms. Bellwether, but only I knew the truth. The higher I climbed, the deeper the gnawing emptiness inside me grew. My success didn't go unnoticed by the company's general manager, Marcus Thorne. "You're the most driven woman I've ever met," he remarked one day, observing me thoughtfully. "It seems like your life revolves entirely around work." I offered a wry smile. He wasn't wrong. Work was my refuge, the only thing that felt stable, the only thing that wouldn't betray me. It gave me the illusion of control, a fragile sense of security. "If you'd let me," he continued unexpectedly, his gaze serious, "I'd like to take care of you, Olivia. I'd like to become your family." His sudden confession, accompanied by the unexpected appearance of a large bouquet of flowers seemingly conjured out of thin air, sent a jolt of panic through me. Family. The word itself triggered a visceral fear. I recoiled instinctively, stepping back, stammering apologies. The thought of trusting someone again, letting someone that close, the fear of another devastating betrayal. It was paralyzing. I felt like I would shatter. Thankfully, Marcus didn't press the issue. He respected my panicked reaction, backing off gently. I breathed a sigh of relief. If I couldn't even handle working here anymore, where else could I possibly go? After his confession, the dynamic between us shifted subtly. Despite my rejection, he didn't give up entirely. His kindness, his subtle gestures of support and consideration became common knowledge throughout the office. He seemed to understand my deep-seated lack of security and genuinely wanted to provide it. And despite my fear, despite my determination to keep my walls firmly in place, I wasn't made of stone. His persistent gentleness began to chip away at my icy defenses. Tiny crack appeared in my frozen heart. I recognized the shift within myself, the nascent stirring of feelings, and it terrified me even more. I seriously contemplated resigning, running away again. The emotional turmoil took its toll. My mental state deteriorated. I started making careless mistakes at work, unable to focus. Marcus, instead of reprimanding me, kindly suggested I take some time off to rest. He even blamed himself, worrying his confession had caused my distress. But I knew it wasn't his fault. It was me. I couldn't overcome the scars of the past. It felt like I had lost the capacity, the courage to love again. During my time off, resting at home, trying to regain my equilibrium, I heard from Chloe again. Kevin and my mother had divorced. Apparently, the financial strain of raising a child, combined with Mom's inability to work due to her health issues after the birth, had proven too much. Kevin's meager teacher's salary, which had barely supported them before, was wholly inadequate for a family with mounting medical bills. And the expenses of a baby, the constant arguments, the resentment, the crushing weight of responsibility. It had eroded whatever foundation their relationship was built on. The love or obsession that had driven them to betray me couldn't withstand the harsh realities of everyday life. The irony wasn't lost on me. The two people who had clung so desperately to each other, betraying me in the process, couldn't make it work in the end. After 4 years away, I finally went back home. My first stop was the old house, the one I'd left behind. The key was still on my keychain. Hesitantly, I inserted it into the lock. It turned. The door swung open unexpectedly. The interior was drastically different from when I'd left. New furniture, a different refrigerator, and toys scattered everywhere across the floor. Pick up a brightly colored plastic rattle. It made a sharp noise, immediately followed by the sound of a baby wailing, then a woman's harsh, scolding voice. Following the sounds, I walked towards my old bedroom. The door was ajar. Peeking inside, I saw it had been converted into a nursery. My mother sat on the edge of a crib, swatting angrily at the bare bottom of a crying toddler. The room was cluttered, messy, filled with toys and discarded clothes. She looked up, startled, her eyes widening in shock as she saw me standing in the doorway. Later, we sat facing each other across a small table in a quiet coffee shop. My mother held the little boy, my half-brother, on her lap. He peered at me with wide, curious eyes. "Say hello to your sister," my mother prompted him gently. The boy shied away, burying his face in her shoulder, refusing to look at me. I'm not his sister, I stated calmly, my voice devoid of emotion. And you are not my mother. We settled our accounts 6 years ago. He and I divorced, she offered quietly, as if that explained everything. What does that have to do with me? Seeing my genuine indifference, my mother sighed, resorting to her familiar refrain. Livy, I'm sorry. God, how I hated those words. Marrying him was your choice, I replied evenly. Me leaving was my choice. We are both simply living with the consequences of our decisions. You have nothing to be sorry to me for. Livy, she asked hesitantly, are you leaving again this time? I nodded. Your father's death anniversary is coming up soon. I know. The 26 years of shared history between us seemed to evaporate in the sterile silence of the coffee shop. Once inseparable, with endless things to talk about, we were now reduced to awkward, stilted questions and answers, just filling the uncomfortable void. Livy, my mother began again, her voice low. Do you know why I was so desperate to have this child? I waited. Because you, she whispered, finally revealing the devastating truth, are not my biological daughter. Because you are not my biological daughter. The words echoed in my mind long after I left the coffee shop, a relentless, shattering refrain. I had never ever imagined this. The reason she'd risked her health clung so desperately to that pregnancy. It wasn't about love for Kevin, not really. It was because I wasn't hers. I had considered countless possibilities, countless twisted motivations, but never this. My father, she explained, had been infertile. 3 years into their marriage, they adopted me, a 7-month-old infant. They lived and worked far from our hometown, so when they returned for visits, they simply told everyone I was born while they were away. I never suspected. I grew up utterly convinced I was their biological child. But now my mother was telling me I wasn't. This revelation hurt more deeply, more profoundly, than discovering her affair with Kevin. Then she told me the rest of the story. The affair with Kevin wasn't just a recent transgression. It had roots stretching back decades. When my mother was 28, vibrant and perhaps unfulfilled, Kevin was just 18, a boy. On the cusp of manhood, full of youthful passion. They'd had a brief, intense, illicit affair. At the time, my mother was already married to my father, and they already had me. The affair ended when Kevin left to attend university. They reconnected years later, when I was 26. The old spark reignited, but this time they used me, introducing him as a potential boyfriend for me, as their cover. My mother claimed she initially did want Kevin and me to build a life together, perhaps hoping I could fulfill the relationship she couldn't have. But seeing us together, seeing our growing affection, jealousy consumed her. It inevitably led them back down the path of secrecy, into their twisted underground affair, the mother-in-law and the son-in-law. Listening to her convoluted, self-serving explanation, only one thought resonated clearly in my mind. 20-odd years ago, I said flatly, my voice devoid of inflection, you used me to replace the child you couldn't have. 6 years ago, you used me to try and live out your own romantic regrets. All this time, all my life in your eyes, I've never been anything more than a substitute, have I? She tried to protest, to explain further, but her words held no meaning for me anymore. He doesn't actually love you, you know, my mother added as a final parting shot, just before I walked away. He just has serious mother issues. I didn't understand why she felt the need to say that. Was she seeking sympathy? Pity? Trying to alleviate her own guilt by painting us both as victims? Or suggesting some twisted kinship in our shared misfortune? I didn't care. If she was pitiable, what did that make the younger me, unknowingly caught in her web? On the anniversary of my father's death, I stood before his grave for a long time. He probably never knew the wife he likely cherished had a history of infidelity, never knew the daughter he was undoubtedly proud of was being manipulated, played for a fool. During my brief stay home, Chloe had filled me in on Kevin's fate. He'd been fired from his teaching position a couple of years prior due to the scandalous nature of his personal life. No other school would hire him. He tried tutoring centers, but the pay was abysmal. Now, he was working as a food delivery driver. Chloe had discovered this purely by chance when he delivered her takeout one evening. Serves him right, she'd spat venomously. Even delivering food is too good for him. Before returning home, I had entertained fantasies of confronting Kevin, humiliating him, making him pay. But after hearing my mother's full story, it all felt pointless. Just like I told my mother, these were the consequences of their choices. They were responsible for their own lives now. It felt like a heavy weight had finally lifted from my chest. My mother and Kevin had both faced repercussions for their actions, albeit different ones. The tangled knot of resentment inside me seemed to loosen its grip. I left my hometown again, but this time felt different. 5 years ago, I had left filled with bitterness and a burning sense of injustice. This time I felt lighter, ready to truly let go, to genuinely start over. My life stretched ahead, full of potential. I didn't want to waste another moment dwelling on the past. On the journey back, I even allowed myself to think about Marcus, about the possibility of giving us a chance. It felt like a huge gamble, betting on myself not to get hurt again. But upon returning to work, immersing myself back into the familiar routine, I noticed Marcus seemed different. The warmth, the attentiveness, the subtle hints of affection, they were gone. My repeated rejections, my panicked retreat, had clearly taken their toll. His interest had waned, extinguished by my fear. And I noticed something else. His phone rang more often now. When he answered, his face would light up with a genuine smile before he quickly excused himself, grabbing his coat to head out. It seemed he had found someone else. Someone brave enough to say yes, to meet his affection head-on. A pang of loss, sharp and unexpected, pierced through me, followed quickly by a strange sense of relief. Perhaps it was for the best. An ending. Before a beginning. I still wasn't sure if I was capable of navigating a healthy relationship, if I could truly be the partner he deserved. I threw myself back into work with renewed intensity, seeking solace in deadlines and spreadsheets. July 7th arrived, the Qixi Festival. The day legend says the celestial cowherd and weaver girl are allowed their annual reunion across a bridge of magpies. China's traditional Valentine's Day. That morning, Marcus announced the company would close early in the afternoon, encouraging employees with partners to spend time with them, and those without to go find one. In an unprecedented gesture, the company even distributed a single perfect red rose to every employee. I stared at the vibrant, dew-kissed rose in my hand, then looked around at my colleagues' happy, excited faces. I felt completely out of place, an alien observing foreign customs. As I was packing up to leave, Marcus approached my desk. He was dressed in a sharp new suit, looking particularly handsome. "Any plans for this evening, Olivia?" he asked casually. Shook my head. But his own bright expression suggested he certainly had plans. A date, no doubt. I forced a smile, offered him sincere wishes for a lovely evening, and turned to leave. I walked out with Chloe, both of us clutching our single roses. A festival like this felt meaningless when spent alone. My only plan was to curl up on the sofa with a distracting TV series. But Chloe was buzzing with excitement, insisting we go out, join the festivities downtown. I couldn't argue with her infectious enthusiasm and reluctantly agreed. The entrance to the main shopping mall was extravagantly decorated, featuring a giant teddy bear constructed entirely of fresh flowers. Giant LED screens lining the plaza displayed romantic movie montages. Clearly, the mall knew how to capitalize on the holiday spirit. As we ventured deeper into the mall, Chloe's excitement grew palpable. She suddenly pressed her rose into my hand. "Here, hold this for me a sec." Slightly puzzled, I took it, now holding 2 roses. But then things started getting strange. We kept bumping into colleagues, far too many for it to be coincidental. And each one, with a knowing smile, handed me their rose. Even the slowest person would realize this wasn't random. It was orchestrated, carefully planned. Surrounded by a growing entourage of smiling colleagues, I found myself gently guided towards a specific area. Before me stretched a pathway lined with flowers, flanked on either side by strangers, each holding a single rose. Someone gave me a gentle nudge forward. Hesitantly, I started walking down the path, accepting rose after rose from the smiling faces lining the way. By the time I reached the end, my arms were overflowing. Waiting there, at the end of the flower path, stood a familiar figure, wearing the same sharp suit I'd seen him in just hours before. "Marcus." Someone gently took the mountain of roses from my arms as Marcus stepped forward, holding a fresh, breathtaking bouquet, his eyes fixed on mine, warm and intensely sincere. "You said you lacked a sense of security," he began, his voice clear and steady, reaching me above the murmuring crowd. So I brought our colleagues to show you you're surrounded by support. You said you felt like you had no family. His voice softened. So I brought mine. He gestured towards a small group standing slightly apart, his parents and sister smiling warmly at me. From now on, if you'll let them, they will be your family too. He took another step closer, his gaze unwavering. I don't know everything that happened in your past, Olivia. But I know this, I care about you. Deeply. I want to help you heal, help you step out of the shadows you've been living in. You shouldn't have to carry such heavy burdens alone. You deserve to smile, to be happy. He held out the bouquet. So, will you give me that chance? Will you let me try? Honestly, being the focus of such a grand public declaration left me momentarily speechless, overwhelmed. But deep down, beneath the layers of fear and residual pain, I knew my answer. My heart, bruised but not broken, yearned to say yes. I don't know, I whispered, the words catching in my throat, vulnerability warring with newfound hope. I don't know if I can trust again. I don't know if I still have the courage to love. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach. Give me a chance, Marcus pleaded softly, his eyes full of earnest conviction. More importantly, give yourself a chance. How will we ever know if we don't try? I don't remember exactly how I agreed, how I ended up stepping forward, melting into his embrace, the scent of roses enveloping me. But in that moment, surrounded by supportive faces, held securely in his arms, I felt happy, genuinely happy, and willing to give myself one more chance, willing to take another gamble on love. Life is short after all. Why not give it a try?